Today I have with me Claude Lamoureux, the author of an article titled Effective Pension Governance, the Ontario Teacher Story. Claude, you originally turned down the offer to become the first CEO of Ontario Teachers. What changed your mind?
Well, Jerry Bowie changed my mind because, he was such a, a natural leader. And, when I told him what I wanted to do if I took the job, he said, fine. And, he asked me a series of questions. But, Jerry delivered that and probably more than I ever expected. So that's how it started.
That's how it started. So you walked through the door and you had a look around Ontario Teachers, the 1990s version. What were your first impressions of the organization?
Well, I was told by the board that the administration organization, and that's all it was, there was no investment department, was running very well. Well, within the first few weeks, I realized that we had, a number of computer files where people were dead in one and alive in the other. And then we had, about 10,000, pieces of correspondence that had not been answered. And this was deemed to be normal. So I thought, well, we can change that.
Right. My understanding is, according to the article, when you had your first conversation with Jerry Bowie, governance and the governance process and how it would be set up was a very important first discussion you had with him. Can you describe that discussion and how that evolved?
Well, I think Jerry was a very smart person. First of all, I think that the person who picked Jerry, who was involved or instrumental is the sort of the CEO, if you want, of the teachers union, Margaret Wilson. And, they picked Jerry because he had a good reputation. And, but when he started, he obviously was able to recruit some people that he knew and convinced the union that this was very important, that, you didn't need necessarily teachers. You needed people who could represent teachers. And, and Margaret Wilson could see that very easily. So without her input, I think that things would have been different. And Jerry, on every committee, initially the government had 5 nominees and the teachers had 3. But Jerry said that every committee, other than the board, will be equal. And somebody asked him, well, what if we have a vote that is tied? He said, it will never happen. Mm-hmm. And, he was confident that, with the right board and the right people, eventually most people would see things the same way. And that's essentially how he ran it at the beginning.
So the selection process, where did you find the right kind of people?
Well, when I arrived, they were all selected, let's face it. But in great part, it was the input of Jerry and the input of Margaret. Between the two of them, they were able to attract a Ted Medlin, people like John Clary, people who had a good reputation. John Clary's a very experienced lawyer, and it turned out to be very important later on, having somebody like Ted Medlin. So I think that Jerry looked and probably suggested people that he knew, that he was comfortable with, that he knew would do the right thing, and that's how the selection was made.
So you all start off together, you're all new. Can you talk a little bit about how the relationship between management and the board evolved as the years passed on?
Well, when I was hired, I remember telling Jerry, well, here's how we're going to run this. We're going to run this like a corporation. And, I gave him my list, and I said, well, one thing I can guarantee you, I will tell you everything, the bad, the good, the ugly. I said the one thing that I believe in is transparency, and that's how we will, deal with the board. We won't have any secret. If there's a problem, we'll let you know. And from the start, we had a very good relationship. And as we hired people in the investment department, because really the challenge initially was to create an investment department, I made sure that Jerry met each one of them. He used to come about once a week, and we'd always have lunch with the people, so you could see the quality of the people we were trying to attract. And he was very comfortable with the approach that we had. Obviously the board had been involved in the recruitment of Bob Bertram, who was a great part of the success of Teacher is due to Bob Bertram. And between the two of us, we tried to be as transparent as possible. And I don't think that we ever had a big problem with the board.
Yeah. What were some of the defining moments? Or were there some events that you can think of through time that kind of crystallize things for you as to what the respective roles were and develop sort of a higher level of trust between the board and management?
Well, we had to, we found out that, a lot of the pension had been miscalculated. So we recalculated 50,000 pensions. And, when you come to the board and say there's a problem, you describe the problem, but you don't know the full extent of it. And, and we kept on, discovering problems, and we kept on telling them, here's what happened. We lost on the investment side, we lost 100 million in BRIEX. I can tell you, I think I sent an email right away to every board member. Here's what happened, here's why. And, in the end, the board didn't say, well, stop. We were able to buy 100% of Cadillac Fairview when we had started with a much smaller percentage. And, again, having the support of the board. So being able and being truthful was helpful. Initially, some of our real estate investment we had to write down. And, to me, we just write it down. I know that people were worried, well, what are we going to tell the board? Well, if the asset has gone down in value, you put it down, no problem, but we'll explain to them and we'll say it's a great time to continue buying. So the board was very supportive and understood what we were trying to do. And as a result, I don't think we ever had, major crisis or a crisis of confidence between the board and management. And, the skill of Jerry Bowie or Ted Medlin, who succeeded him, was very helpful in getting that.
Compensation. This has been a big issue in the pension fund sector. You had a view right from the beginning as to how teachers should deal with compensation. Can you describe the philosophy?
Well, again, you go back to my famous luncheon with Jerry Bowie. I told him, I said, we will have an incentive plan. And, right away he said, yeah. But there was nothing. So I arrive, and, it's a question, and I was hiring people and essentially telling them we'll have an incentive plan, not knowing exactly the shape that it would be in. But it was, I had been in the financial service industry, and, I told Jerry, we're going to need this. And he said yes. And so there was never a question of, are you going to do it? Are you not? So we started and we implemented things that we adjusted over the years. But again, the board was very supportive and understood the need to attract good people, because our cost, even including all, the incentive that we could pay, even at the maximum, was really a fraction of what we were paying to outside manager. And so we wanted from day one to manage a lot of the money in-house. We wanted to, and even today and even at the beginning, we managed something like 80% in-house. So you need to attract good people. Otherwise, you're really at the mercy of outside the manager.
Did you ever have any criticism from the partners, the Ontario government or the Teachers Federation, about the compensation side?
Well, we've had criticism, but I can tell you, every time we had an orientation for a new board member, we would invite the people from the government, the civil servants, and the OTF. And we were fully transparent with them. We told them everything. We described the compensation plan. We will tell them everything, when it would pay, when it would not pay. And in general, the leadership of the OTF, the Ontario Teacher Federation, was very supportive and understood why we needed to do this. And to this day, I don't think that they've been, critical. Yeah, you've had some members that would ask questions. We have an annual meeting that is an interesting forum. And normally, we tell, the chairman answers a question about that. And in general, the teachers, most of them are satisfied with the approach that we've had.
So, in conclusion, looking back 20 years later, if you had to kind of summarize what drove the success at Ontario Teachers, what would you summarize? How would you summarize it?
Well, having a good board was critical for us in having the success and taking some of the risks that we took and making sure that, they understood what we were doing. It was, a lot of time people say, well, management is responsible. When I looked at it, I can tell you, having the right board was very, very helpful, and having a board of people that knew what we were trying to do was very helpful, and was a good part of our success.
Well, Claude, thanks for this conversation. I think that you've given the listeners some interesting and important insights and ideas to reflect on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith.